Penny Zenker, I am so glad to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me, Jenny.
It's going to be a blast because I mean you are the focusologist, so this is your expertise. But I always like to start at the beginning of everybody's story with workaholism. And yours started with a nickname that I think a lot of us have had during our lives, which is Workhorse. So tell me about the birth of your Workhorse.
Yeah, it was really funny. And even, I think that even like when I was really young and I had like a paper route and all the different jobs that I've had, it was just, I was always just working harder than everyone else, right? I was always putting in more time. I was always looking for the next thing to do, even if my role was finished, where can I help out and do more? And I guess that's the thing, is do more. And I was on a co-op. I went to Drexel, so we had a co-op program, and I worked for Coopers and Lybrand, which is one of the, used to be the big six. I don't know how many there are now from the accounting firms. And we would work long hours, and we work on tedious types of work as the co-ops. And I was there and I was working, and everybody else was taking all these breaks, and I'm like, dudes, we've got work to do here. Let's go. And so some of the breaks I'd work through, or I'd go back early, and just that, I think that was the beginning of me really recognizing it. And they're like, wow, you're such a workhorse. If you needed to get something done, you gave it to the workhorse, right?
Yeah. And what drove that workhorse? Like, what was your reason for continuing to work when others stopped?
I don't know. Like, it's a little bit of a compulsion. I think one of the things that I have discovered is that, like, I'm a little obsessive about adding value, and maybe that comes from a deep insecurity, right? Of not feeling like I'm of value. I don't know, right? There's so many rich things that it could be. I fall into traps of wanting to please other people, right? So it could be to be recognized, to please others. I think also, I don't like open loops. I don't like leaving things undone. And so me taking a break would mean that there'd be stuff that was undone. Like it was the death of me in my technology business when I was doing application development. And I'd work into the wee hours in the morning because it wasn't done. Like, it was really hard to put an unfinished piece of code and go to sleep. I don't know. I just couldn't put it down. So I think it's a myriad of compulsions that add up together.
That word compulsion, I've heard come up consistently. Compulsion or anxiety, either way, it shows up the same as like a pace or a need to close some sort of gap or complete some sort of task. Yeah. So it worked for you. It worked for you. You sold a multi-million-dollar company. Tell us about,
the good thing about being a workhorse is you get stuff done.
Yep, exactly. So you built a fantastic business from it. You got stuff done. And how did that feel as you were kind of working your way through and having these great accomplishments?
Well, they're hollow accomplishments sometimes, because I sold my business for the wrong reasons. I started to not be able to handle the magnitude of work that was there. And I thought, well, it's because it's my business. If I went to work for someone else, then maybe I wouldn't have this same obsessiveness, right? Maybe it's not a personality flaw. Maybe it's a circumstance. And so I just figured, well, and I, at the time, it was also starting to blame other people. You hear this from a lot of leaders today. And so I know it firsthand. They're not accountable. They're not showing up the way that they should be showing up. And the truth is that I wasn't the kind of leader I needed to be in order to motivate those people, in order to, bring out the best so that they wanted to own that work. I was a terrible micromanager. And that was really what was burning me out, is I was trying to fix it and take it away from them, and just added more and more onto my plate. And so I sold the business to get away from the chaos, and then took another job that turned into, so I was supposed to be the chief technology officer for this daughter company of a large market research company. And I thought, this is my 9 to 5, right? I'm in this place where I can just go in and do my hours and go home. And they reorganized the company. I was in a task force, and not a month later was I CEO of a holding company, now responsible for 5 companies across 4 countries. So, we think that the grass is greener on the other side, but that is so not true, right? Our dysfunctions just follow us, and then they get bigger.
And I want to dig into that moment when you got that news. Hello, Penny. You are now the CEO of a holding company. Like, what was coming over you in that moment?
It was like, I don't want this. It was fear. It was fear, because I knew that this isn't what I signed up for. I wanted that 9 to 5. I wanted to relax. I had worked myself to death with like 36-hour work shifts a couple times a month in my own business, right? And so I was young, so I could still manage to work on a little bit of sleep, but I'm starting to get a little older and getting really tired. And so I was not happy. And what I didn't mention is it was also in German. So the overwhelm was, I didn't know what people were saying to me. So it didn't take me long that I actually went into my boss's office to quit. So
Okay.
it broke me.
Did you quit? Did you quit, or did you go into it and something happened?
So I went into it and something happened. That something was Peter, my boss, who was an amazing mentor. And he just knew, he was just one of those guys that knew exactly how to phrase a question. Simple is better. So he just laid out to me, he just kind of said, Penny, I hired you to make decisions, and what you do with the rest of your time is up to you. And I was pissed because that seemed really oversimplified at the time. But the truth is that was really brilliant, because it cut right through all that complexity and everything that I was feeling. And it just made me realize he's right. Actually, I'm focused on all these things that really don't matter. And so that was my opportunity. That was really my turning point to look at things differently and really not just know the 80-20 rule kind of thing, but really live by it. And that's something that I've been coming back to as a reset process my entire life. Actually, I didn't even realize it, but maybe even before that. And that's why I interpreted it that way. But that was huge. It was a huge turning point for me.
And you talked about that knowing versus the living, and really it's getting it from into your head, into your body, so that you can be in that moment and know exactly what you need to be doing and exactly how you need to show up. How did you get there? Because it's great to think of the 80-20 rule on paper, but how do you actually suss out what things matter?
Well, I think the first thing is, for me, got there to be in that mindset was, kind of to hit rock bottom type of thing. Right. And then I think whenever you have, and hopefully you don't have to, right. You don't have to have that in order to put together good practices, but it does make it land that much deeper. There's no doubt, right. Is that so it really, for me, was just a constant practice of stepping back. And I have this 3-step reset process that I've now been able to identify, but it's just stepping back and really getting perspective of what's going on and realigning. So anytime I feel stressed, I feel anxious, I feel overwhelmed, I feel overcommitted, any of those things are trigger points for me to say, okay, hold on. You don't need to feel this way. It's time to step back and get perspective and decommit and take some things out of your calendar and tell some people you're sorry. But, it's just a way for me it's a coping mechanism, right? And at the same time, it helps me to make sure, am I focused on the things that are most important?
So sometimes when we're trying to get that perspective, we're trying to get a little bit out of our heads. And what I mean by that is that fast moving part of our brain that's over analyzing everything, slowing it down so we can see the big picture. Do you have any techniques that really help people get into that moment?
Well, I do have a number of techniques that help you to find your 20%, but I think the simplest one is just a question. It's just to slow down, is to recognize the signals, right? Is we have these, what I call reset moments. We have them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We just are going too fast that we miss them or we ignore them. You know, people have all sorts of warnings about their health before they find out that their health is really in very bad shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we just need to pay attention to to the signs. Are you sleeping well? You know, are you feeling anxious? Are you like grumpy when you get up? You know, because what are you thinking of? What are you focused on? And so I think that's the first thing, is to recognize the signals, is to recognize those moments where you have a choice to say, how do I want to show up here? What do I want to focus on? And I like to create like some morning rituals that help me to, instead of being reactive in those moments where those signals come up, because that's one way, right, is to be reactive and to say, okay, these things are happening and I need to decommit. And that happens all the time. I'm not saying that I'm so proactive that I never have those other moments, but I try to be more proactive and set up those reset moments and say, okay, when am I, plan the slowdown, right? Plan the times to step back. So I have some things that I do in the morning that help me to do that. So I have a gratitude journal in the morning. I like to set an intention for the day. I said a word for the year, right? All of those things help to direct our focus. Maybe it's a word for the week or the quarter, just helps you to say, okay, this is what's important to me right now. So like my word of the year is connection, right? And I've got other goals and things, but connection is the goal because I want to reconnect with some people that I've lost connection to, friends. And so I'm going through my list and reconnecting with people from college and things like that. I want to connect better to my audiences. So I'm looking for how I'm showing up in my storytelling and things like that. So it helps me to reorient myself. If I didn't have that word in the back of my mind, then it wouldn't be guiding me, right? It's like that guide. And it's the same every day. You know, when you start your day, do you have an intention of how you want to show up today and what you want to accomplish? What are the top 3 things? I have a simple little process that I use. It's called the 1-3-5 planning method. And I kind of use that every day just to review what's most strategic that I'm working towards, that one thing that I could do to just, you know, keep the ball pushing along. 3 things that are kind of midterm milestones that I'm working towards. And then 5 things that absolutely must be done by me today. So that's kind of how I organize my stepping back and creating that focus before I start the day.
What I love about everything that you described is it goes back to Peter's words, simple, like simple is better. It's about cutting through the noise and creating simplicity. A lot of times we over-engineer planning instead of just allowing it to be something that is so simple we can carry with us, because our brains can only handle so much stimulus at once. So
totally.
So I love that.
Those people have all those like Gantt charts and everything, and we definitely do over plan. And that's something that I think the rate of change that we are in, right, for environmentally for our businesses and whatnot, is we can't afford to plan at that level of detail anymore anyway, because things change so fast that it would be wasted time.
Yeah. No, I agree. So a great mentor of mine once said, love the planning, not the plan. So it's about setting a repeatable, easy to do process where your planning can constantly be reset around what's actually happening in the real world. Because it changes constantly. You can't be married to the plan that you had, because it was probably, it's probably wrong now.
Right. Well, actually, interesting. One of the things that I I like to say is that it's good to have a plan. It's even better to have a practice.
Oh, I love that.
And so that's where my reset practice comes in is,
Yes, because it's habitualized, then it becomes
yeah,
just a part of how you show up.
habitualized, but conscious, right? A habit tends to be unconscious, like it
Mhm.
goes to a place where it's unconscious. And I think that what I like about a practice is that it's very conscious. You're very purposeful about a practice.
That's a good delineation. So it's something you do consistently, but something you bring to the surface of your awareness. So
Mhm.
you are, in fact, integrating habits to reality and choices.
Right. So that we really align our actions and our intentionality.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So this was your turning point. But you said it well earlier. Hopefully not everybody has to hit this rock bottom. And for better or worse, most of the people I interview, like myself, hit some sort of rock bottom.
Right.
So is there any, like, let's talk about some warning signs, yellow flags, red flags, things that cropped up before that, that now in hindsight, you have the honor of seeing 2020. What would you say were signs that you missed along the journey that people could pull out to help them identify earlier?
I think part of it is in listening to your own excuses. I don't have the time, or I must get this done, or, just like some of those, like we just listen to ourselves, right? Because if we were listening to someone else say it, we'd see right through that bullshit, right?
Mhm.
So I guess, I guess it would be that it was to have maybe to pay attention a little bit more to some of the things that I was saying to others, but also to myself. I wasn't really, I was just kind of jumping from thing to thing to thing. So that would be one of them. And I guess it's just really also be aware of the anxiousness. Like I still get it. I still get that where in the beginning of the pandemic, for instance, when everything shut down, my workhorse wanted to jump in and say, it's okay, I got this. I'm just going to work through it. Right. I'm just going to overwork, especially when it could have been a time when I could have relaxed and I could have stepped back. So it's just recognizing, what are my choices here? There are choices, and we think that there's no choices. So what are my choices? Let me step back and see what are my options. When we set deadlines and we get stressed because we have all these deadlines, are they false urgencies, right? Challenge the deadlines and the things that we set. I have to do that all the time. And I've come to practice, instead of assuming that it's due as soon as possible and that means tomorrow, that I get to ask a question when I'm talking to someone and say, when do you need that by?
Mm-hmm.
And then also, if I don't want to, if my schedule's so tight and I want to give that the best effort that it can, would it be okay if I got it to you by this date?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And kind of guide that. So I've gotten much better in setting and in helping to set realistic deadlines. And I think that's something that people can take control over.
Yes. Yeah. Much of that anxiety can be tamed by making the implicit explicit. Let's bring, things that we're assuming to be true out into the open and putting dates and times and expectations and communications around them. It can really relieve a lot of that stress and pressure. And
Totally.
You mentioned something so powerful. You talked about anxiousness. So one of the things that, as I'm starting to dig into my research, my results aren't like finalized yet, but I've been interviewing and starting to do some qualitative research, and I'm finding that anxiety is at the root of a lot of this for people. And so I've been researching, what is anxiety really? And so through that discovery, anxiety, interestingly enough, one of the definitions on one of the medical things I was reading was restlessness.
Oh, and I have restless leg syndrome, like you really see me sitting here like, nah.
I do, yeah. Me too. And so thinking about about that energy and how do we take that energy, and you talked about the things that we tell ourselves, and I told myself for so long that was such a good thing to run that fast. And then I started to realize I can feel that anxiousness here, whether it's good or bad, excitement or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
becoming a practice of how do I bring that anxiousness deeper into my body so that I can be more intentional about how I'm channeling that energy for the day. How have you worked through some of this own, this restlessness, shall we say?
Well, I do think that when we get in our body, it helps us to get out of our head. So, I used to be an avid mountain biker when I was living in Switzerland and doing this in German. That was really what helped me to get through that time and to keep that balance and to be able to. And so I don't have as much of an outlet with that at the moment. And so actually I just started Qigong, which is a breathing practice and an energy practice. So I'm really excited about it because I feel that anxiety rising again in me, which is, so it's not something, I don't think it's something, if you've worked through it, it doesn't mean that it's gone, right? It means, because I feel like it's probably just a part of who I am. And there's parts of it that are good, that drive me to bring out some of my best, but there's part of it that goes over the top, and there's that tipping point, right, where it's good until it's not, and you need to know when it's no longer serving you and it's starting to create harm or stress or more anxiety. And so yeah, I don't know why. In line with this connection for this year was also wanting to get more into a breathing practice. I've meditated off and on, but I don't know, I'm working with somebody who does Chinese medicine, and he's helping me with some aches and pains and different things. And he does this course. And so I'm super excited because I think breathing is the key to everything.
Yeah. And I'm actually, someone just recommended a great book I'm excited to read about breathing. And ironically enough, I just started Qigong a few months ago and love it. So I hope you,
Awesome.
hope you love it as much as I do.
We can exchange resources.
Yeah, there you go. So you kind of got into this a little bit earlier, but there's a point where you own your problems and you are able to bring solutions to the table. And there's a point where you actually create more problems. How do you identify the line?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm trying to think of something different than what I already said, because it really does come down to, that you've crossed the line when it's affecting your relationships, and when that is, right? Like if you're anxious and it's creating you to be grumpy, when you're interacting with others, you see them and their behavior change. So it's recognizing those kinds of things around you, whether it's your relationships, whether it's how you feel in your body, if you're not sleeping, I mentioned that earlier, like those types of things. Trying to think, how do you know that you've tipped across? I mean, I don't know what else to say. I don't have anything in my head right now about that, but I think that it's those signals that we ignore.
Yeah. And that's the theme I'm hearing throughout our conversation. So this is the Jenny Pop quiz point where we get to see how well I was listening.
Well, I want to hear from you for a second. I wanted to hear, what do you think is the
Oh, that's So the way I work it is, when you're outworking the problem, when there's a couple of things. You've already mentioned this, but when you are when you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, it's either not the right thing to be working on, it's not important, which you've gotten into in the 80-20 rule. It's something someone else could be doing, or what you're doing is keeping somebody else from growing into what they're capable of doing. So that's when we start to create more problems. And someone worded it really well. It's like, I'm creating my own chaos, or the word that I've been using recently is imagine muddy water. If you're out there shaking the glass, the mud gets all in there. But if you just let it sit, the mud settles to the bottom. Sometimes we create our own chaos by shaking around, by continuing to try to solve something instead of just asking, hey, was this already taken care of? Is this really important?
Totally. That micromanagement, right? That
Mhm.
totally was that mud stirring up, and definitely.
And I'm guilty of it. Like, I mean, I think that's, part of it's part of this whole thing. So it's really, like you said, identifying when it's happening and that the road is not linear. So
No, it's not. And maybe just a quick thing before we go into,
yeah.
the lightning round or whatever, is, we can also share with people. We can be vulnerable and let them know, hey, this is an issue for me. I want you to know that I happen to have some tendencies to micromanage. And hey, please call me out on it, because I don't realize I'm doing it. And it doesn't mean, it has nothing to do with you. It's
Mhm.
about my need for control. And and so if I'm just jumping in too much or whatever, just give me the, heads up. So I think we can also put it out there and have conversations about it with the people that we work with, so that they know where we stand as well.
I love that. It's another example of making the implicit explicit. And root cause funny. And in my research, as I'm talking, I find that there are two main things that drive workaholism. One is performance anxiety of some sort, or desire to perform of some sort, which, like you said, can be connected to more root things around being good enough, being loved, all kinds of being included, all those kinds of things. And then the other one is actually financial security. So a lot of people, their workaholism is born from a place of not having had a lot. And so
Right.
they're concerned about more the physical and financial security component of it. So I have both. And so oftentimes when I work with people, I let them know I have money hangups. And so if I start like elevating a little bit over something that has to do with money, it's not you, it's me.
Mhm.
And
it
here's
helps
my
just to get
childhood
it out
story.
there.
Let's go into my own childhood experiences. And they
Right.
are really good then about calling you out on it and not
Right.
taking it quite so seriously. And I think that's awesome, Penny, to just embrace, who we are and how our past informs how we show up. People are willing to give us a whole lot of grace if we are willing to take accountability for that.
Absolutely. And then we collaborate a whole lot better, and
Yeah.
we can lead a whole lot better because people understand our style, and we connect at a different level. So
Yeah.
it's actually a win-win across the board.
I love this. Okay, so pop quiz. I'm going to try to recap. We had so many good takeaways here, but what I'm hearing is the biggest thing that you recommend everyone do is read the signs. Just stop, pause, and read the signs, because the words you're saying, the actions you're taking, the reactions of others around you is telling you something. You're going to feel it in your body, in your sleep, in your relationships. And so if we learn to read the signs and stop and pause and reset. And let me see if I can remember your reset process. Step back, get perspective, and then make the change. Is that
Realign. Yeah.
realign? Thank you.
Realign with what's important. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So that is kind of what you recommend infusing throughout your entire way of being.
Absolutely. If we just had that practice, that anytime a signal came up in any which way or form, we didn't get the result we wanted, we feel aggressive, somebody's aggressive towards us. If we just triggered that reset practice and said reset in our head, it would be a game changer, because we wouldn't get triggered by things. We'd be able to make better decisions, more objective, from a place of objectivity and clarity. It's huge. It's helped me tremendously in my life.
That is amazing. Well, thank you so much, Penny. Penny is a focusologist, an international speaker, business strategy coach, and best-selling author. She founded, developed, and sold her first multi-million-dollar business while living in Zurich, Switzerland. Her book, The Productivity Zone, was an Amazon bestseller, and her TEDx, The Energy of Thought, has over 1 million views and has gained attention around the world, which was one of my first introductions to you, actually. So it was an awesome, awesome watch, and I recommend people look at it.
Thank you.
Any parting words of wisdom, Penny?
I would just say it's good to have a plan, and even better to have a practice.